Hello and welcome to the stream. It has been a while, and first and foremost, I hope you can hear me well. And in fact, it has been almost a full year since I have last done a live stream, and I think now is a good opportunity to get back to it because a lot has happened, especially in the world of Gen AI, and at the same time, I think actually a lot of things are still the same. So we can use today's live stream to kind of catch up on a few of the topics I talked about in the past on this channel and kind of get deeper into it and kind of refresh our memory and kind of look at the new interfaces and stuff that have happened in the last few months and years actually. Besides that, a little bit of housekeeping as well. For one, you can theoretically now leave, what is it called, super chats. I don't even know how this works, but you cannot become a member, but you can leave super chats now, which is the first time in a live stream. So please feel free to do that. I don't expect you to do that, but if you feel so inclined, please feel free to do so. And if you have any ideas and feedback on a membership for this channel, please let me know in the chat, in the comments later, and I would be very interested in that. Besides that, for everyone who's still here from my old creative coding tutorials, especially in 3JS, those are still alive and they will be coming back. So stay tuned for that. No reason to unsubscribe yet. I actually have a video in the making right now about 3JS and about creative coding, so there will be more stuff coming in the future. So I hope you stay tuned, and I'm looking forward to hear from you and to keep you around. With that being said, we can jump right into the topic of this stream, which is this kind of Gen AI workshop. It's a bit more like a workshop, I guess, compared to a tutorial usually, and it has a bit of structure. So I will walk you through all the things that you need to get started. So generally speaking, who is this workshop for? For one, it's for anyone who wants to get started. Like, we will start from the very basic concepts, like we will actually install everything together to some degree. At the same time, I think it's interesting for like catching up and getting some new insights and perspectives into how to use AI. So you don't have to have any prior knowledge or anything like that, but this should still work. Besides that, you can also find all of my old videos. You can actually also click on all these things, all these slides I'm showing today, because we have the link in the video description, or I have the link in the live stream description. So you can actually click on all the links here by just opening the slides, and then you can follow along, download all the things, follow with all the workflows and everything. So that's something to keep in mind. Another thing I want to mention, if you are on a Mac device right now, that is totally fine, and you can follow along. Just the installation is like the standard procedure for macOS devices. But I actually covered it, even the macOS devices I covered in this video here. So you can theoretically, and I think you shouldn't hear the sound, so I can actually play it, but I'm also going to mute it. And there's advertisement. Anyway, you get the point. You can actually watch the video right here where I cover many of the things I talk about today as well. But again, today is a bit more of the follow along workshop kind of approach rather than this pre-cut tutorial. So that's that. Now I'll give you a very quick breakdown for the things that we will talk about. So for one, we will start with Stability Matrix. Stability Matrix is kind of the hub where all of the models and applications that we use in this AI context reside, where we can install them, where we can actually manage them and do things with that, which I find super convenient because it used to be very difficult back in the day, but now we have Stability Matrix, which I very much like, and I've been using it for years now. Then we will get started with ComfyUI. My philosophy, especially over the last few months, especially years by this point, is that there are many, let's say, more user-friendly, more easy or easily approachable AI interfaces that you can work with. But I think ComfyUI is by far the most powerful one. I don't think that that's actually the case, I would argue. It's by far the most powerful one that's easily accessible. And once you get a hang of it, it's not that complicated. It looks a bit complicated at first, but actually I would advise you to start with ComfyUI. So just follow along and trust in the process. We will get there. It will make sense at some point. Okay. Then we will first do some text-to-image generations with getting started with ComfyUI, and then we will move on to image-to-image generations. I think that's a very helpful technique to get better results with very low effort very easily, and it's actually faster too, so I think that's a nice hack to work with. Then this is actually the other way around. I think I will do it today, but we will download, test, and use LoRa's, which is very interesting. LoRa stands for Low Rank Adaptation Model, and it's a model that you can use in addition with a big model. You don't really have to understand it at this point, but you will understand it later on, I believe. And we will also work with ControlNets, which, besides image-to-image generation, I think is the kind of technique that has the biggest impact on your image generations, controlling them. That's what the name, where the name comes from, obviously. Okay, so this is kind of the plan for today, and I will try to get through it pretty quickly. I will not go too much into detail with everything, but I will try to explain everything so that you can follow along easily, hopefully. So, oh, okay, I forgot the most important part. Number 6, we will also generate the image from the thumbnail. So if you also have this open and if you want to quickly change location in the slides, you can press the escape key. And this image we will generate basically the exact same image as well. So I think that will be kind of fun for you to do as like a last kind of practice. And after that, we will do something with the LoRa's. So that is what we will do. Now I didn't forget anything. And another quick reminder, if you want to follow along, is that you will need a PC or a computer, a Mac OS device or Windows device or a Linux device, doesn't really matter, but an actual laptop or computer. It will not work on the phone for what we are doing now. There are ways to do it on the phone, but this is not the way to do it. So when we talk about the minimum requirements, the most important part, especially on Windows and Linux, is the GPU and the VRAM of the GPU. So you can just have a quick search if you're not sure how much VRAM your GPU has. I'm not going to show you how to find that out right now. It doesn't really matter to that great of an extent, in the sense of all the things we work with today are open source and free, so you can just follow along and see how far you get, and maybe you run into issues with your hardware, but it doesn't cost you anything, so you might as well just try it even if you don't know from memory your VRAM. RAM is also important, and you should have at least 20 gigabytes of space on your device, which is actually important, especially since we download a few different models today, so this will quickly actually become quite a lot of space on your device. For macOS users, you will need an Apple Silicon device. This does theoretically work on devices that still have the Intel chips, so just a regular CPU. And I think, yeah, I'm not going to say something stupid because I'm not so much into the macOS world. Anyway, for Stability Matrix, you will actually need an Apple Silicon chip. So that's something to keep in mind. And the more unified RAM you have with your Apple Silicon chip, the better. Here we also see 12 gigabytes plus and also 20 gigabytes plus of space. The space is basically the same. So the first thing we have to do is to install Stability Matrix. So there are two ways, there are many ways to do this, but those are the two easiest ways. So if you're on the slides, you can just click on this link, and this should get you onto the official Lycos AI website, where you also get directly put forward to the downloads page. And here you can download it for whatever device you have. So here it automatically detects Windows. We can also manually detect or select Windows and macOS and Linux. You can also just search for Stability Matrix in your search engine of choice, doesn't really matter, but I'm gonna go the quick route and just gonna click on that and then install it like so. And now I just move that over very quickly. And we can just save it anywhere, although I would recommend you to save it somewhere where it's not on the cloud storage. So especially on Windows devices, sometimes you might not even realize how much, what's the Windows cloud called again? I don't use it. Is it OneDrive, right? Sometimes you don't even realize that you actually send all of your desktop files to OneDrive. So that's something to keep in mind. You shouldn't do that, and you shouldn't put this into like a cloud storage, like a Google Drive folder on your device, but any other folder will be fine. So for many of you, this will be either your desktop probably or your downloads folder maybe that is not synced up. So then we can actually click on this and it will show us let me do it like this. It will show you the file you downloaded. Obviously, that is a zip archive. So I hope generally you know how to unzip a file. If you don't, on Windows you just right click on it and you can choose extract all, and then you can just extract it right here. And that will give you all the things you need for the moment. You can also use 7-zip and whatever, but this is one of the easiest ways to do it anyway. So this is only 300 megabytes, which is the case because we haven't installed anything theoretically yet or practically yet. But now that is kind of starting, and we will slowly grow to more than 300 megabytes. So once you click on this, and make sure to unzip it first, and then you can actually delete the zip archive. So this one, the zip archive that looks like this, you can actually just delete. So we can just right click and delete, and you will only need the unzipped one. If you open this from the zipped archive, it doesn't work. So make sure to unzip it and then open the folder like so, and then you see the stability matrix .exe file. Again, if you are on macOS, this works as well. You can just download the macOS version, and if you have had a Mac for more than, I don't know, a day or so, you will know how to install it. Otherwise, you can check my other tutorials where I explain how this works on macOS. So we have the .exe file here, so I'm just going to double click it. That will most likely, yes, give us this warning, which is Windows protected your PC, and it says Microsoft Defender Smart Screen prevented an unrecognized app from starting. Running this app might put your PC at risk. Yes, many things put your PC at risk. The reason why that is because of the signature. It's not like a recognized app in that sense, but it is an open source app, and you could theoretically also build it from the source code. You don't have to do that. What you can do is just click on more info and run anyway. Of course, you do all of this at your own risk, but I've been using it for years. It has not caused an issue for me personally, so I can recommend it in that sense, but you still do this at your own risk. So now we click on run anyway, and that will start Stability Matrix. So, very important thing, before you continue anything, important, please don't go ahead too quickly, is to turn on portable mode. This might not be activated by default. I think they might have just changed it, that it's by default set to portable mode. Portable mode is much more convenient. It basically means that all the files that you will download, that you will use, everything you need to run these programs, is inside just one folder. That is very convenient in the sense that you can just put it on an external drive, or you can just delete the folder, and that deletes all the files. You don't have to uninstall the program, you just have to delete the folder. As I said, the other thing that's nice is that you can actually run this from an external drive. So if you have a sufficiently fast external SSD, solid state drive, you can actually run this from the solid state drive. So that's kind of nice, especially if your folder runs larger. So anyway, we stay with portable mode. We don't want to install it in the regular mode. That would be this, but we want to have it in portable mode. So portable mode, just for you to see again, portable mode, okay, and then continue. Then we can send our data, but there's no reason to do that, so we just say don't share analytics, and we are fine. Now you get a whole list of different user interfaces, different ways to interact with Stable Diffusion or other AI models, basically. And there are a lot, as you can see. And this might be very confusing, and some have advantages, some have disadvantages. You only have to check one for this tutorial, and as I mentioned earlier, I think this is actually the best way to get started and the most, let's say, sustainable resolution for long-term working with AI. So that is ComfyUI. So here you see ComfyUI by ComfyUI Anonymous. There's also ComfyUI Z-Luda, which is particularly developed for AMD GPUs, which if you have one, you might try that. I have an NVIDIA graphics card, so I will just use the regular ComfyUI. The regular ComfyUI will also work with AMD GPUs, just this other one seems to be optimized for AMD GPUs, so that's something to consider. For now, we just click on ComfyUI by ComfyUI Anonymous. Did I say unanimous earlier? It's anonymous. Anyway, so here we see now recommended models. So recommended models is just, I guess, recently popular AI models that people have been downloading. I don't know. You don't have to select any of those. And especially for the purpose of this tutorial, we will not. It doesn't really matter if you click download or close as long as you don't select one. So I will just click close and it should still run in the background now. What is happening now is that ComfyUI is installing. So I think a nice thing they changed, I think, in recent times is that they made it so that once you click ComfyUI, it starts installing and not just once you finish this whole process. So it already starts while you're looking for models and stuff like that. So now this is preparing everything in the background that we would otherwise have to do kind of manually to some degree. What we can do now is basically just close this. So this will still, as it says here, the downloads are available through this little area down here. If we click on that, we actually see it's still running and it's downloading Torch right now, which is an important component for what we will do today. So this way you can open it again and you can actually just put it away. Once ComfyUI is installed, it will pop up here. So now it's empty because it's not installed yet, but we can already do stuff. So that's what we will do now. I will walk you through what you can do in Stability Matrix. And I think by the time we checked Stability Matrix, everything is actually installed already. So first step that I think is very helpful is to click on this open navigation thing. So you can just navigate it like so, but this way you can actually read what is happening, which will be helpful if you're getting started with this. So let's walk through these different menus. First, we have the Inference menu or area, or however you want to call this. We can just click all of this away because we don't need this. Theoretically, you can just use Stable Diffusion or basically any AI model in this tab, I guess. But it's not very powerful. I mean, it does the same thing, but it kind of is limited in what you can do. And I don't find it super user-friendly, so we will just go to ComfyUI as soon as we can, as soon as it's installed. The next tab is also kind of boring as of now, because we have not downloaded any models yet, as you might recall. So here we see, theoretically, all the models that we have downloaded, or by that installed. There's no real installation needed, you just have to have it in the right folder, but we can just call it installation or download. Here you will find all the AI models and kind of supplementary models that we can use, so that's very convenient. But again, we don't have anything now, but to get something, we get to the next tab, which is the model browser. That is the place where you can find all the kind of AI models that you might want to use for generating images or videos or whatever, basically. So there are a few things to keep in mind right here. We go from top to bottom, just to keep it simple and left to right. So we first see in the top that we're now in the CivitAI tab. There are two other tabs as well, Hugging Face and OpenModelDB. OpenModelDB I actually never used. Actually, there is also nothing in there, I think. It hasn't, I haven't seen anything in there for a while. It has been a tab, but I don't know, it's not populated. But anyway, the more important ones are CivitAI and Hugging Face. Hugging Face we will talk about later. So here you can already see it's a bit different. It's just like a list that you can tick and then download stuff like that. We will do that for ControlNet later. But here you can see there's much more. Actually, there's like a lot, like a whole lot more here, because CivitAI is a platform where users are basically making their own AI models available to the public for free, mostly. So these are fine-tuned models often, so they are base models. These base models have been trained by big corporations or universities because you need a lot of power and computational resources to actually to actually train in a large AI model. However, what is relatively easy is to fine-tune them, so to kind of improve them, make them kind of work a bit more aesthetically or work in different styles. So this is what people have been done at home, and this is kind of what we can find here. If you wanted to use the original models, you can also get them here. So we will work with Stable Diffusion 1.5 and Stable Diffusion XL base. So you can theoretically get them here, but honestly, and as many problems as those models have, the models you find here on CivitAI produce the much aesthetically more appealing outcomes, I would say, and kind of more refined outcomes that you will find. So for the moment, we will stay here. Now let's go through the tabs we have here and very quickly run through them. So the sort is very self-explanatory. We kind of want to get the highest rated first, so we just keep it like that. Period, also all time. Good thing, we can theoretically choose it to whatever this week, so we will get the highest rated models this week, which will now take a moment, but anyway, so here you will find some, and here you can already find like problematic content as well. That is something to keep in mind. This is not very well moderated, so you will find partially disturbing stuff and not safe for work stuff, just to keep in mind. But we're interested in period all time for the moment, and now we have the two more important categories and filters to check. So for one, we have model type. You don't have to understand all of this. The main ones we will look at today in CivitAI are checkpoint models, which are the large models, like those are the models that you can generate images with. And then later we will look at LoRA models. These are like smaller models that you can use in addition to checkpoint models. But if we want to generate images, we first have to have a checkpoint model. So that's that. We want to keep that for the moment. The next thing, and this is going to be much more confusing, and I hope it's not too complicated to understand, but we will get there. You don't have to understand like every single kind of model to follow along. We will actually just use two of these models for this tutorial in particular. So that is SD 1.5 and that is SDXL 1.0. We will look at this more closely again when we talk about the LoRA models, but for the moment we don't need that. I will just explain to you which models to look for. So I will turn those filters off and we will get back to them in a moment. So I will just give you the two models that I have used the most in the last years, I guess. So one is called DreamShaper. So you can just go up here and just search for that. So there are different DreamShaper models. So here you can already see DreamShaper XL, which already kind of hints at it's a Stable Diffusion XL model. But we also have, and I hope this works. I guess I have to go select all in order to actually see all models again. It's not loading. That's very strange. I can also improve the search by searching for DreamShaper 8, and CivitAI is down. So that's an issue, an actual issue. I already saw that before the live stream, but I didn't think it's a thing that will last. So I will keep this short in the sense that, how can we talk about this now? Can I actually click on this? It's not loading, but I can click on this. Okay. Few things. I'm just clicking on the DreamShaper XL model now, but there will be different ones. So if you click on it, you get a few different options for how to download them and some information on how to use the model. So up here you see this horizontal scroll bar, which will give you different versions of the same model. So this one is a turbo model, this is a lightning model. You don't really have to understand what this means for the moment. For the other model I was about to show you, it would be more important. This one we will not download, but you can change the one that you want to use and then click here on download and it will download the model. What is also very interesting is that you get these two boxes here. So this one, I think the lower one is dependent on which model you choose, so that's kind of interesting. And this one will give you helpful information for later. These settings will make more sense in like few minutes, but just so that you have seen it before, here it says like we should use the CFG scale of 2, 4 to 8 sampling steps, and then it tells us here DPM double plus SDE keros or normal, and then here another one. So these are values that you will understand in a moment from now. Maybe not right now, but later this will make sense. So let me see, is it online again? are we back? Are we back up? Is CivitAI running again? No, actually not. So anyway, okay, good thing is, here's the one that I was about to show you. So usually you would search for DreamShaper and it would actually show you this, but now it's also on the main page. So I will just open it and see if I can also download it. So here you will see a bunch of different versions, like a lot of versions actually. So what we are searching for DreamShaper is DreamShaper 8 in this case. This is, as you can see here, base model, a Stable Diffusion 1.5 model. Just to quickly explain what the difference between Stable Diffusion 1.5 and Stable Diffusion XL is. Stable Diffusion 1.5 is a much smaller model that can work much faster. The issue, so to say, the downside of it, is that it has a lower base resolution. So Stable Diffusion 1.5 was trained on images with a resolution of 512 by 512 pixels. So you can already imagine perhaps that's a very low resolution, so images might look blurry or pixelated and maybe not super defined. So that is the downside of it. But therefore, this will work on very poor hardware as well, very weak hardware, so to say. If you don't have a lot of VRAM, you might try to use Stable Diffusion 1.5 first to see if you can actually get it running. If you want higher quality, you will go to Stable Diffusion XL, which is a lot slower in a sense. It will take longer to generate an image, but the resolution is much higher. So the resolution of Stable Diffusion XL would be by default 1024 by 1024 pixels. So those are the two things to keep in mind. So now I want to choose 8 because I don't want an Inpaint model, I don't want an LCM, I don't want a diffusers model, I just want the basic one in this case. That is the Stable Diffusion 1.5 DreamShaper 8 model. So I assume this will not work. I will just click on download. Yes. No, it started downloading, so it's not fully down, so that's great. So now if I click on it, we can already see ComfyUI is fully installed, and this will now download the model to our model folder. I will, like, if you are in a similar situation, you can also pause it and you can also quit it if you don't want to do that, as I will do because I already downloaded all the stuff, so we can kind of speed things up in a moment from now. But now I also want to show you a second model. So this is the faster model, and I also want to show you one that I've been using for a long time, which is Zavichroma XL. So the XL already hints at, and now it doesn't work again. That's unfortunate. No. Anyway, if you would search that, you would find the model, and usually I would select Zavichroma XL version 6 because, I don't know, I've been working with that for the longest time. So if you want to follow along, you can download both of those models. Once CivitAI is up and running again, you can search for Zavichroma XL and then download version 6. That would be kind of self-explanatory. And you can go back theoretically and also download DreamShaper. So then you have two different models depending on your hardware, and later you can also delete one again if you only want to use one or the other. So this is how you get started with models, and again we will return to this briefly later. So now we can also go to the output browser. This is empty because we didn't generate any images yet, but here you will find images once you generate them. So that's something to keep in mind. And workflows is something you can use for a ComfyUI, but I can already see there's like some not safe for work content, which is not what we are looking for. So I actually never use the workflows because I create my own, or I get them online from different sources, not really from here. So I basically just ignore that. So now we have ComfyUI, and now you can click on launch. What I will do is I will quickly go to my previous installation because they already prepared everything, and then we will start again. So give me a moment. I will close this, and then if you give me a moment to prepare this, I have this vanilla version, which is basically my version where I have the least stuff done inside of, so it is most usable for this tutorial, I believe. And now I can click that. So for you as well, next time you open it, just do the same thing again, just find the folder and click on the exe. So now I can click on launch, and this will start some stuff. And here we can already see a few of the things that actually happens from Stability Matrix, which is that it detects the GPU, the graphics card I have, and adapts the VRAM setting to that. So that's very convenient. I'm not sure if ComfyUI would do that outside of Stability Matrix. I don't believe so, but I'm not entirely sure. So now the next thing you want to look for is this line here. So to see the GUI, so the graphical user interface, you can go to HTTP and then this address, which is basically just a URL, a web address that you can open in your browser. So now we can also click on Open Web UI, and that will open the address, this address in our browser. So you can either just type that down, copy paste it, or you can click on this button. I hope this works. Yes. So now this will open ComfyUI for the first time here. So the first thing it does is basically show us these starting templates. Oops, I didn't know you can actually move this around, but you can somehow. So this is very, very helpful already. So if you don't want to follow along the workflows that I will show you in this tutorial, you can also just go through here and kind of check what they are doing, and they will actually also help you download the models that are missing. So that's very convenient. So the most basic thing you can do is just this image generation thing, and I will tell you which model to download. The thing is, before you just click on download, you can, it's nothing bad, nothing horrible happens, but this will give you the Stable Diffusion 1.5 pruned version, which is not very high in quality, so to say. So what I will recommend you to do, for sake of this tutorial as well, sorry, is to follow the workflows that I've provided for you, just to follow along and start with the right settings right away. So you can use those, and those are a great starting point, but I will give you some from my experience and what I set up as well. So we can just X this away, we don't need that, and theoretically we could get started with that. But what we will do now is we go back to the slides. And here, right, I could have done that as well. That would have been very smart of me. I didn't do that. But here you also see the models that I looked up for you, basically. And here you can also click on the links, and that will get you to the website. So here you can also download it. So I could also go on and click download here, and this will allow me to download the file. So maybe I will show this right now before we actually get started, because some of you, if you have the same situation as I have right now, you cannot follow along, especially if you're watching live, you cannot follow along if you don't get the models. So maybe I show you this first to make sense of it. So if you want to manually download a model from the internet, like from this website, rather than from Stability Matrix, from within Stability Matrix, you can just go here and click on download, and then you will have to understand the folder structure of a Stability Matrix. It is very, very convenient. If you have any experience with other setups, this is very nice in comparison. And let me tell you that if you don't have that experience yet. So for one, you will record this folder because we've looked at it for a while now, which is the Stability Matrix Windows x64 folder. And that one contains two basic things, one folder and the exe file. So the exe file isn't shown here because it's not important for the download, but you will have the exe file, and then you have the data folder. If you're following along on macOS, I will just tell you this, but you can also find it in my old tutorials. You will find the data folder inside of your default application folder in macOS. I hope you know what that means. If you have used macOS for more than a day, you should be aware of your applications folder. So in this case, we go to data, and that is the same thing you will find on macOS as well. And here we will find a very useful kind of folder structure. So we can basically ignore the downloads, we can ignore the assets, and now we have the three things that are important. The portable git you can ignore as well. That is images, which will save all the images that you generate basically, or here you can find the files outside of Stability Matrix. Then we have the models, which now makes sense hopefully to you, because this is where we can put the models manually. And then we have packages, and packages just means the different AI applications we install. So in this case, that's ComfyUI. Sometimes you might want to also go into this. So this has like its own whole structure. You don't have to understand this very much. That is why Stability Matrix is so convenient, because it kind of organizes it for you a little bit better. So now we can click on models, and here you will find a lot of folders, and that might be very confusing in the beginning, but it doesn't have to be because we don't use a lot of those. So you might remember we are working with Stable Diffusion. So easiest way to remember is to just search for the Stable Diffusion folder, and Stable Diffusion folder is where you put your Stable Diffusion models. So I can double click this and now I can save the file and it will download it in there, and that will make it available in Stability Matrix and in ComfyUI. So that's very convenient. I will not do that now because I already have it, but generally if you have an issue with downloading it from within Stability Matrix, you can do it like so. And then here you will also find the LoRA folder, and you will also find the ControlNet folder, where see ControlNet. So these are the 3 folders important for us today. So if you want to manually install, so to say, download models, you can do it like so. I'm going to cancel it because I already set that up in the past, but just for you to be able to follow along. So I can close that. We have the models. So now we have the first thing. Here we have an image of an apple, which is very boring, I understand that. You can make much more interesting things, but we will talk about apples today. Not because I like the company that much, but because, I don't know, it's a very easy visual topic to work with. Anyone will recognize an apple. So this is the Stable Diffusion 1.5 text to image workflow. There are 2 ways to go about using a workflow like this. For one, and that might be standard procedure perhaps, is to click on download here, and this will hopefully, if I set this up correctly, will give you a JSON file. So usually these workflows are in these JSON files, which is just a text format which will kind of organize text information basically. So what you can do is basically just save it anywhere, and when you go back to ComfyUI, you can just drag and drop this file into this interface, and that will give you the workflow. Another cool thing, and that's why I put the image of the apple there, is, and I will have to see if that works in this browser, but you can also just drag and drop an image, and I think that doesn't work. Does it work? No, I cannot drag and drop it in there, but you can also just, let's do it like this, you can save the image, and now you will see here's the image file down here, that's the PNG. No, that's the JSON actually, that's the PNG. You can also drag and drop the PNG and then it will also load the workflows. So all the workflows are by default embedded in the image files of the images you generate. So for you later to find a workflow again, you can also just check your images you generated and that way get those information back basically. Okay, so now we have this. And first thing we can do, this is the exact same workflow for the image we have. If I don't do anything but just click on this run button here, it will start generating the image. That is assuming that you already downloaded the model, right? So you have DreamShaper in here, and it assumes that you put in the workflow basically. That's all. And interestingly, I think hopefully is what you will see is that this is the identical image as that, even if you do that at home. So one, I guess, is it a strange misconception? Not really, but a way to think about AI is that it can theoretically produce an infinite amount of images. That's kind of the intriguing part of it. That is because we start with a random state of noise in the beginning of the image generation. And this Gaussian noise has a theoretically or mathematically infinite amount of starting states, so by choosing a different starting state we get a different outcome. However, if we have the same start state, hope that makes sense, and then do the same thing on a different device with the same settings, we still get the exact same result out. So if you just use the exact same workflow as I do with the same settings, it will produce the same image. However, if I run this again now, what you will see is that it will produce a different image. It looks very similar because it looks like an apple because we're generating an apple, but the interesting thing is now we can create an infinite amount of images. This will be helpful in a moment again. I will slowly go one step back just to catch up on what we did, but I think this is a very interesting concept to grasp already. So keep that in mind. Now we will go from the beginning all the way to the final image again. So just to kind of give you the most obvious stuff and go through all of these nodes. first thing to understand about ComfyUI is that it works on these nodes. So these nodes are these kind of things that you can move around and kind of add, and you can double click and add like new nodes, and you can delete nodes and reconnect them and do all sorts of things with that. That is the fun part about it. It's very versatile. You can basically kind of do anything with it. You can even do just file conversion or whatever. These are based on Python, the programming language Python. So basically anything you can do with Python, you can do inside of ComfyUI. The first thing we have here, and they go from left to right basically, in a sense, so you can follow them. And this will actually tell you the temporary route it will take. So it will go one after the other basically. So let's go through all these different nodes that we have in this very, very, very simple workflow. So the first is the load checkpoint model. Very self-explanatory. You load your checkpoint model, you can click on this and it will show you all the checkpoint models you have. So I recommended you to get DreamShaper 8 and CivitAI XL version 6. You can also use version 10, but later in the workflows we will use version 6. So now I can just change the model like that. There are some other things to keep in mind when we change the model. However, this is where you change the model. Let's stay with Stable Diffusion 5 for the moment, because you see here, this is the SD1.5 workflow. This has a bunch of these noodles, these spaghetti nodes, or kind of tangles, however you want to call them, that go to different parts of the workflow. And the first thing it goes to is the clip text encode, and then it has embraces prompt. Prompt, you might have heard, I think by now anyone has heard of the idea of a prompt. So basically you tell an AI what to do, right? That's the same thing you do when you use ChatGPT. You tell it to do something and that's your prompt. And if we want to generate an image, we kind of explain what kind of image we want to have. So here, the interesting things, we have two of those, right? And the content of what they say should already kind of hint at what they are meant to do. So this one describes the scene, right? Photographic image of a beautiful yellow apple. And then we have a second one which says bad quality, and we kind of don't want bad quality, right? But we want the photographic image. So I hope you kind of wrap your head around that. So now the interesting thing is where those two go to. So this one goes from conditioning to positive. So this is the positive prompt. This is explaining what we want to have in the image. And this one goes from conditioning to negative. So this is explaining what we don't want to have inside of there. Now, technically, I can just briefly explain it. You don't have to understand it, but maybe it clicks in your head. When we generate an image, we kind of go from what I already mentioned. We kind of have this random Gaussian noise to start with, and then we basically have a denoise generator. What this KSampler will do in a moment is denoise the image. We start from pure noise, and then we subtract noise slowly, step for step, towards a final image that actually shows something. So the AI model kind of knows what an apple looks like, and then it will try to kind of get towards an apple from complete random noise. It will do that by generating a positive and a negative example. So it will have what it wants to generate, and then it will also generate something that's the opposite of that or has qualities that you don't want to be inside of there, and will subtract that from the positive image. So basically what we have here is it will generate a second image and will subtract the contents, kind of the pixels of the second image from the positive image. In this way we get to a more precise image, or an image that's more controlled, so to say. So that's something to keep in mind. There are some other things to keep in mind for prompting. Prompting is its own science, and it will be one of your main tweaking points, I would say, for trying to improve when trying to get better images with AI. So I don't want to give it a number. A lot of percentages of the quality of your image is dependent on the prompt you use. For Stable Diffusion 1.5, it is still very like tag driven, so now you can add things like HD or like I don't know, what other thing I could do, what can I do, table, so that it sits on the table, or like still life, something like that, and these kind of tags work relatively well with Stable Diffusion 1.5. Stable Diffusion XL is a bit better with actually working with whole sentences and structures like that. So what I would usually recommend you is to use a mix of full sentences, kind of setting the scene, so to say, explaining a bit about the broader context, how things work together, and then you can give it extra information that will kind of force it towards a specific direction, so to say. So maybe we can check this, and now you will see this looks much more like a still life, and it has a table, so it kind of incorporates the tags we added in the prompt. I hope that makes sense to you. So this will be your main kind of working area for the beginning, kind of just trying to see what works to get to an image that you like. The two next most important things are the empty latent image and then the KSampler. So I'll take a sip of water before I get deeper into that, but you can already look at it and we kind of understand, hopefully from what I said earlier, what this means. I give you a second to think about it. So as I said earlier, Stable Diffusion 1.5 is based on 512 by 512 pixel images. So the empty latent image basically is this random starting noise that I mentioned earlier. It basically sets the dimensions for the image you want to generate. So if you want to generate a larger image, you would change the resolution here. So now we can do that theoretically. For one, it's kind of nice. We can just type something in like 1024, or we can also just multiply it by 2. It can do maths, which is very nice. And then we can generate it again. And it might look strange, maybe not yet, but this is a very forgiving subject matter actually. But what you will find, especially for example if you generate portraits, it will start to like stack hats on top of each other, which is very strange, right? Like you don't have like two hats on top of each other. The reason is that the understanding of Stable Diffusion 1.5 is basically just a quarter of this. So it will kind of try to generate like it would kind of lack the understanding of putting two things together in a sense, if that makes sense to you. Maybe you would see this more drastically if we have like a non-square resolution, where we kind of tend to generate the same thing twice, right? Like now it puts like a random apple down here because it kind of doesn't understand the ratio of the image. I hope that kind of makes sense. So if we work with Stable Diffusion 1.5, we are kind of bound to this resolution practically. So that's something to keep in mind. Then if we want to change this here, if we go to a different model, we always have to keep in mind to also change the resolution to match the resolution to the model that we're using. I hope that kind of makes sense. So the next most important thing, as we can see here, everything basically goes into the KSampler. And the KSampler is kind of the heart and the brain of the whole image generation thing. And I will go through this bit quicker maybe because we're already 50 minutes in, but you can just hover over this and it will give you quite a helpful explanation for this as well, so you can just check it later and kind of see what it means. So the first thing is the seed. That is what I earlier explained. This basically defines the starting noise. So if I put the control after generation to something like fixed, and now I generate an image, it will first generate a new image, right, with this seed. And usually it would change to a new random seed every time you generate an image. However, now I set it to fixed, and if I run this again, nothing will happen because it has the exact same seed and the exact same setting, so it will always create the exact same output image. So if I put this to fixed and I keep the seed the same this way, I will just click on this, but nothing happens. So that's something to keep in mind. For one, if you run into this issue, if you're like, why does it not do anything? Maybe it's that you have your seed fixed. But yeah, then you can put it to a different value again. You can also just, if you have like some light OCD or something like that, you can also put the value to 1 and then you can set it to increment. So this way it will just go through like seeds one by one. There's nothing, I would say, like a good seed or a bad seed. It's just a different state of noise. And with a specific prompt and a specific seed, it will look amazing. And sometimes it will have a kind of not so great output if you have just a different seed. So there's nothing like, I will tell you, like the magic seed is 1, 2, 3, 6, 5, 7. But just keep in mind that you will need a new seed to generate a new image. So I'll put it back to randomize because that's kind of like the way to capture it most, I guess, in the sense. So I'll just have it like that, and now I will generate a new image, a new random image every time I generate something. This one looks actually very nice. So now if you see this and you want to have the exact same image, you can just copy or like just write down the seed here and generate it yourself. Okay. You can also, by the way, as I mentioned earlier, if we have this image now, we can also theoretically just, drag and drop it in here, and then we will get the seed with which this image was generated with. Okay, something to keep in mind, understanding seeds. Next most important part is steps. So now we can do something. We can put this back to fix, because I like this quite a lot. Although now we'll have a different one first. So maybe we will just go to number 1 and just generate that one again. So now, just to reset for a brief moment, the reason why I did this now is I set the seed to 1 and I put control after generation to fixed. So now we have a comparison image, right? This is the image we first generated. And now by changing the different values that come after this, we can see what impact those values have. How does this specific value change the output in the generation, right? Because again, if I click on this again, nothing will happen because I didn't change any other setting. However, if I now say something like I want to have 80 steps, and now I run it, it will start again because something changed. So now we can keep this in mind and we can see the next image. And what you will see is, I hope you kind of kept the other image in mind, what you will see is that now it gets a leaf and it will now get some cloth or something like that. On the other hand, we started with 20. If I go down to something like 10 and I do this again, if I do this now, it will look kind of strange. Actually, it's quite interesting. I don't really understand why it has like a lot of background and stuff like that, but let's go back to 20 and see that again. Wait, okay, never mind. Okay, that was stupid. I don't know what I was thinking. I guess it was still the old seed. I don't know. Okay, so this is the seed at 20 steps. Keep that in mind. And then 80. It had the kind of cloth before, right? Okay, never mind. I thought the cloth just appeared out of nowhere. So anyway, here you can still see the cloth and you can see the kind of what is it? The leaf. And if you go down, it will kind of look a bit more messy in a sense, I would say. So you will also see that it was much faster now. Okay, I hope you kind of get a feeling for this now, so I can now explain to you what is happening. As I mentioned earlier, when we generate an image, we start from this completely random noise to begin with, and then we just sequentially subtract noise from that image, right? Or not from that image, but from that noise, and then we get towards an image. We can do this for theoretically however long we want. Am I going to do that? Maybe because I can actually have it running in the background. I'll just put it to like 200, which is an insane kind of value that is not very useful. But anyway, you can theoretically do this for an infinite amount of steps, but it will not mean that it looks better. So now you can already see it starts to look more grainy and things get detached and you kind of saw it grow and then kind of decayed again. So it's not a linear scale, right? It's like a bell curve. At 200 steps, it's not 200 more times refined because it went through 200 steps of refinement, but at some point there's diminishing returns. So 20, I think, for Stable Diffusion 1.5 is a good starting point, and it's very, very fast. However, by increasing the steps, if I go to like 80 or maybe 100 will still be fine, you can kind of get more refined examples out of there. For example, here you get the leaf and a bit more detail and stuff like that. So that's basically what steps is for. Also, I hope that's self-explanatory. More steps also means more time. So if you do 100 steps, as you saw with 200 steps, it will take forever. I hope you got that. So let's go back to 20. So we have our kind of base image again. So this was our base image. The next value is the classifier free guidance scale. A CFG value is the short form. So CFG, classifier free guidance scale. This basically means how much the AI will listen to your prompt, right? So here we explain what we want to have, and now the AI has to decide how seriously to take your instructions you give it. The general idea is the lower the value is, the more freedom the AI model has and the more creative outcomes you will get. Creative in the sense of like not strictly following your prompt. And the higher the value is, the closer it will try to stick to your prompt, which also means if you have a bad prompt, it will very hard, like it will try very hard to stick to something that's a bad prompt, which isn't always great. So this is a value to be kind of cautious with and play around with. So now we still have it to fix, so every time I click it, it will be the same outcome, right? So this is the outcome with the CFG scale of 8. So let's just, for argument's sake, maybe go to 1, even 1 is very low. So if I do that, it will do a lot, like a lot is happening. It's very creative, so to say, right? It's not strictly anymore what I explained, but it adds like a bunch of other stuff, like it adds a background, which I didn't explain, like I didn't prompt about my background, but we'll just add something there. And do a bunch of stuff. It looks fun actually, but it might be too much, and it might be frustrating in the sense of if you want to really get towards something, get towards your prompt and have something that really captures what you write, you will have to make sure that you have it high enough. So now I'll just put it to 2, maybe to show a bit of a difference, right? 2 already looks more like an image. The other one was kind of like broken to some degree, but this looks more like an image now. So 2 is actually something you can work with. So I usually like to use something between like 6 and 8. So this is very close to our input, or like the original image we had when we used this with 8, right? So this is how it looks with 8. And if we put this very high now, so I'll first do something that's semi-reasonable, let's go to 12 maybe, it will stick very closely to what we have. So I'm not sure what's happening here, what it's trying to do here, but since we have table as a specific prompt, it kind of puts the table as like a very important element, like it's much table. The table takes a prominent role in here. And if we go even higher, so let's do something crazy like 30, which will not really be usable, we will see that it goes mad. Like it starts to get like artifacts and everything just looks kind of weird and it will kind of fall apart. If I go to something like 100, it would basically just be like this weird, grainy, noisy, nightmarish thing. I don't know. So that's that. Keep it somewhere maybe between like 6 and 8. I will go back to 8 for the moment. The next 2 values we have, I will also try to cover very briefly because I think in Stable Diffusion 1.5 they are less crucial in a sense. The sampler, I will just click on it so you can see there's a lot going on in here and you don't have to understand all of this. The sampler is basically the algorithm that determines how to reduce the noise. So this is quite an important parameter, right? If you use like a different kind of mechanical, I was about to say, technical way or like computational way to subtract the noise, this can have quite a big impact. So one thing, for one, we have GPU models here, which is good if you have a good GPU. And I will just see if this works. I think it will not, but I will just run it. Actually work. No, it doesn't work. That's what I was thinking. I'm not really sure for Stable Diffusion 1.5 which samplers work well, because I kind of feel like just Euler, I don't know how to pronounce it, is the most reasonable. With Stable Diffusion XL, we have a few more options that actually work well. The same for the scheduler. So where the sampler kind of determines how to subtract the noise, the scheduler kind of determines how, in like what kind of intervals it will subtract the noise. So here as well, I think only normal and simple work reasonably well. I think Keras might also work well, but yeah, this one actually looks quite nice. So we kind of get to an outcome that was closer to our 80 steps, but with just 20 steps by using Keras as a scheduler. So that's kind of interesting. One that I really like to use for Stable Diffusion XL that doesn't really work here, I think, is exponential. it looks fine, not great, but something that I really like to use for Stable Diffusion XL. But anyway, Keras was really nice. Keras is also considered, I think, higher quality, but it might also be slower. So on this PC it's very fast, but if you have limitations with your hardware, you might just keep it to simple or to normal. So we can also just have it running with simple ones. How much of a difference that makes? Not really. I think normal is very, very close. Yeah, it's almost identical. So these are all the values to work with. And honestly, this is 90% of what you need to know to understand how to work with AI. With these kind of values, they will reappear over and over again. And as you might recall earlier, one of the models on CivitAI actually had like instructions which settings work best with the model. So you might recall like the DPM something, or like the, I think it said Keras or something like that. These models sometimes explain to you what are the best settings and the steps and stuff like that. So now you're basically ready to go and just generate images away. And this is the low quality thing. I mean, I think for apples it works very nicely because there's a lot of data on how apples look like, I assume. But now we can move on to the next thing, which is Stable Diffusion XL. And here you can already see much more detail and stuff like that, I would say. So let's first try, so this will work anyway, I already know that. Let's see if the JSON works, just to see if I uploaded the correct thing. That's the image, and that is the JSON. Yes, it loads correctly. So what you will see here, for one, I can just run it again, and it will have the same kind of thing as we had before, where it will generate the exact same image. Doesn't look like it. Because I used the JSON, I didn't use the image. If I use the image, it had a different seed, so now it will look the same as we have in the slides here. So to keep that in mind. And basically it's all the same. The prompt is the same in this case, but you can just change the prompt the same way. Now we select the Zevichrom XL version 6, and the only other thing that really has to change, or doesn't have to, but should change, is the empty latent image. So as I mentioned earlier, Stable Diffusion XL has a base resolution of 1024 by 1024 pixels. Or pixel images. So this is the resolution that we can use now, and this will take longer, but the outcomes will be more detailed usually. So now we can kind of just do the same thing again, just briefly go through the different settings and how they look with Stable Diffusion XL. So this is already kind of more detailed, although we can see there's like two of these, I don't know what they're called. I mean, they are stems, I guess, stem extensions, whatever. But yes, what we can check again is to see how it looks like with more steps. So Stable Diffusion XL can usually deal a bit better with more steps, but as you can see now, compared to earlier, it will also take quite a lot longer than Stable Diffusion 1.5. So that's always something to consider. So if this kind of I say break your laptop or PC, it will not break it, but if you see it's like really struggling, like it takes a long time, and your GPU is like, all your fans are spinning like crazy, you might want to go back to Stable Diffusion 1.5 or keep it like this, because as we can see here, like this has quite a lot of detail compared to the other one already. And especially now with 80 steps, it looks really nice, I think. So we can go back to 20 for the moment. Same idea with the CFG value. Let's just first generate the 20 step one first, and then we can kind of go to maybe 2 was a good CFG that actually still works. So let's see what's happening then. In this case, perhaps it's not so apparent because, I don't know, it already kind of created the surrounding before anyway, but it will look different. And if I put this higher, we don't have the table prompt at the moment. So, oops, there's not really much to follow so closely in these prompts. So putting it higher will not really be so apparent in the sense of what we saw earlier with the table, where the table really comes out. But here you can already see this is very high, like the saturation becomes very high somehow when you increase the CFG value very much. So let's put it back to 8, and now the sampler here will really make a difference. So I will just generate this again as our baseline image. And here I really recommend you, if you have a good GPU, if you have good hardware, I would recommend you to use DPM double plus, so PP, and then underline 3M underline SDE, and then GPU. So this one is the sampler that has the highest quality in my opinion. So if we generate the same image again with that sampler, it hopefully looks better, because otherwise my argument doesn't sound very good. I don't know why it did that. I assume because it's not supposed to go with the normal schedule. It doesn't. Like, okay, I'm genuinely confused. But usually I pair this with exponential. So let's look at this again. If something broke, or if my memory serves me well, because I've used that forever. Yeah, now it looks better. So this doesn't work well with 20 steps. That's a few to few steps, but I really like the combination of this sampler and this scheduler. So if we put this to 80 now, I think this will be a much nicer image, so to say. The other thing to consider is that this combination of sampler and scheduler is also comparatively slow. So despite me saying that the quality is higher, which your opinion may differ, make sure that you have enough computational resources for it. So this is what it will look like with this sampler and this scheduler with this seed. So that's all we have for this. That is already all the stuff we kind of have to understand, and now we kind of go through a few more examples where we'll skip all these basic steps and kind of just add more information to it, and I will try to keep it quick and short and brief from here on. So this was Stable Diffusion 1.5 and Stable Diffusion XL, and now we have the image-to-image workflow, which I think is really, really interesting. So for one, we can just download this again and just see if it works, if this is the correct workflow. Looks right, is right, I think. So yeah, this looks good. So there's much more happening inside of here. Not much more, actually. Actually, there's just one more thing happening in here, which is this thing here. So this is a group. These boxes are called groups, and you can move them around together. And you can also bypass them together. If you don't want to use them, you can right-click them and say bypass group nodes. So this will turn it into this purple, and then you can right-click again and set group nodes to always, which will turn them on again. You can also use the short key Control B. Actually, you cannot with the group, I assume. Control B. You can have Control pressed and then select multiple nodes like this and then press B. That's how it works. So Control pressed and then you can select multiple nodes. Anyway, not so important. Let's get back to topic. This is the thing that's new, which is the image-to-image part of it. So everything else is basically the same. So now we need an image to work with. That's the next kind of consideration, right? So we can use an image as a start point and generate an image that is based on that input image. So I will quickly skip ahead to show you two good sources or resources for reference images. So one is Museo, which is an open source project and website which archives public domain images from different museums. So these are usually artworks. And then we also have Unsplash, which is more like a stock photo site basically. And both of these licenses in most cases should allow you to use it for AI image generation, because they basically allow you to use it for whatever you want to. So what we will do now is to use Museo, because I like that one a lot. And now what we can do is just search for Apple, which is what I did before. And now let's see if I can find the same Apple I found before. Or if this is broken again, why is it loading so long? Why is today everything just down? Am I crazy? What is happening? Okay, that's very strange. Very unfortunate, but usually you would open the site and you search for something and then you find artworks for it. So let's see if Unsplash is working. That looks better. So here we can also just search for Apple, and the ones with the plus we cannot use because they have a paid license. So we can also go license and then just go to free, and this will only show us the free images. So what kind of Apple do we want? I will use this one just for illustrational purposes because we have something in the background happening. So now I can download it and I don't need it in high resolution. because for Stable Diffusion 1.5 we can only use a resolution of 512 by 512 pixels anyway, so I will just download it in this medium size and put it here. So thank you to Louis Hansel, I assume is the name, for providing this image to us for this educational purpose. So what we can do now is just insert this image into this load image node. So the thing already explains it, it loads the image, right? Here's also a reminder to set this to 512 or 1024 pixels, which relates to the upscale image. So we load the image first and then it goes to the upscale image. This is confusing. I am just giving you a bit of background information. I'm very happy that this node exists because it used to not exist, or at least I never saw it before. I think this is a relatively recent addition, maybe last few months or so. Although it says upscale image, it can downscale it. It can also do that. So in order to avoid generating images with way too high resolutions, especially if, oh, it loaded, great. So now I can actually find my original reference, which was, I think there was a yellow version of this one. Yes, this is the image I originally used. So now I can show you something as well. So these images are usually very high resolution because they are museum grade scans, right? So now I can just go here and just go to copy, and that should copy the image. And if I go back to here, I can actually just kind of right click paste. I'm not even sure, but I can just do Control V and it will paste the image. And here now you see this is 3000 by 2400 pixels basically. So if I want to generate something with this, it will take forever and it will break and it will look weird. So what we have to do is to downscale it first to get it to the appropriate dimensions for our model that we're using. So this is the Stable Diffusion 1.5 version. We do have a Stable Diffusion XL version later. Now I just put this image in, and I can also crop it to make it square, which is important for Stable Diffusion 1.5 in particular. And if I run it right now, it should get us the same image that we had here. Is it? Let me see. Yeah, looks the same, right? Yeah, same seed, same input image, same everything, looks the same. Just as a reminder. So now you can see it kind of gets the composition and the colors from it a bit more. The only thing that's new now compared to before outside of this, so just to give you a rundown of this before, like here you can see this is 3000 pixels, upscaling, then here down here you see the resolution after it was downscaled, then it goes to the VAE encode to get it to the kind of AI space, so to say, to the latent space, and this one goes into the latent image. This is basically how it is connected to the KSampler, just to keep that in mind. And the only other thing besides that we have to look for is the denoise value. This is very interesting and important. If I put this to 1, we can still generate images, but it will basically ignore my input image. It will basically just start from 100% random noise. If I put this down, just going back here, if I put this down as I had before to like 0.75, this will use 75% random noise and 25% of my reference image, of our reference image. So it will be able to add new things to the reference, but it will start with the same pixels as the reference image has. This also, in a sense, simplifiedly speaking, means that we have to go through 25% less steps because we already take the first steps from the already existing image. So if I go to 0.5, it would be actually much faster comparatively than if I had it at a higher value, for example. Just to keep in mind. That's why I find it so interesting as well, especially for SDXL. If you have like a very slow laptop, for example, you might be able, like, it might take like 5 minutes to generate a high resolution image with SDXL, but in an image-to-image workflow, you might actually be able to get it down to like 3 minutes by using a reference image, which is very interesting. So here we can already see it gets like much closer to what we had here, right? So this one looks much more like our reference image as we had before, although it still adds new things to it. It's not exactly the same thing. So this is something to play with depending on how closely you want to have this image related to this. The way we use it here now is also quite interesting because we use a painting, right? We use the composition from the painting, but then we give it the prompt of like a photographic image. That's kind of why I find the prompt interesting. So we can convert like a painting into like a real world image, or the other way around. We can use like a real world image as a reference and then give it a prompt something like oil painting or something like that, and we'll get closer to an oil painting. But we'll have a very similar look to the photograph, for example. The other thing that I can do now is to set this to 0, which is, I would say, it is kind of stupid, because if I run this, it will be instantaneous because it uses 0% of random noise. So now you will see like this will always be instant because it doesn't do anything. It just basically takes this image and puts it once through this latent space and then spits it out into the pixel space again. So that's very boring. We don't want to do that. So we always want to add something to it. So 0.25 is only adding like 25% extra stuff to it, so it will be very close. This was very fast as well. And again, if we put it to 1, it's kind of pointless because it will basically ignore our input image. So this apple looks very quite different to that one, besides also being a yellow apple. The other thing we can do now that you will realize is that if I use the image that I downloaded just a moment ago, if I use this one, something you will realize is that it will take the colors. That is like one of the main things, and this looks very strange. I don't know why. If we put this lower, maybe it will be closer to the original, but this is already a photo, so it's kind of pointless in what we are doing here. But the thing that you should learn from this to some degree is that you take the kind of color information, the pixel information from the input image. So if you have these more bluish, turquoise-ish pixels, it will create something turquoise-ish from it, even if you give it a different prompt. So yeah, that's basically it. I made a different tutorial about this, how I use this for a project I'm doing of like using paper textures, because it has this nice kind of paper color, paper texture, and then I give it prompts of like portraits with people with veiled faces. So we kind of create these kind of very nice linen textures that resemble paper, which is a very interesting approach. So this way you can use it as well as like a creative practice. So that's basically all we have to consider here, and then we can also just do the same. Let's just see if all of this works. The image will work, I already know that, but let's see if the JSON works as well. So this is the image, this is the SDXL version, so yes, both work. So this is basically all the same, but here we have a higher resolution, so I just run this and it will be practically the same. So we can just have it running to illustrate the point, and this should be the same. No, it's probably not exactly the same as this one because I use the JSON now. But image-to-image workflows can be very fun. You can play with very different prompts and reference images to find something interesting that you might want to generate and create. So here you see the references I usually use again. The next thing, control nets. That is quite a big step to take from now. So what we will do is the same thing we did before. We just download the workflow and just get started with it. So this is the JSON, and it will give us an error now that is saying some nodes are missing. When loading the graph, the following node types were not found. And that is depth anything preprocessor and Canny edge preprocessor. So we can just click this away for the moment. I think if we click on it, nothing happens, right? So we can just click it away. And if we zoom out like so, we will see that two of these nodes, like for one, we see like things are getting more complicated at this point, but we can see two of these nodes are basically just red, which means we don't have them installed. These are something called custom nodes. What this means is that people on the internet just use Python to create extra features for ComfyUI that we can use as well, by them being very kind to us and giving us access to them. So in order to use this, we first have to understand how to use custom nodes. So what I will do now is close this, and here we see all the stuff that I just downloaded. But anyway, here we see ComfyUI as we have opened it, and there's a few things now that we will learn in Stability Matrix again. So you can just close the window, the browser, or just minimize it, and then you will see this again. First and foremost, if you want to stop ComfyUI, which we will have to do now, we just click stop. So that will stop it. So now it says it stopped the process. Very nice. In order to go back, we can we see ComfyUI here and packages here, and we can just click on packages, and this will show us the packages. A crazy thing you see now is that since we started the live stream, there has been an update, and sometimes there's like a bunch of dates per day. You don't have to run them every day and all the time. But anyway, in the future, you know that you can run updates here. But for the moment, we want to go somewhere called extensions. So we quit it, and now we can click on extensions here. The thing that you want to find now is called ControlNet. So we just search for ControlNet here, which gives us a bunch of different options. There's two ways to go about this. For one, don't just download and install random custom nodes. As a reminder, they are just built with Python, and you can build bad things with Python. You can build viruses and things that can harm your software or your hardware with Python, or do random things that kind of hurt your system. So theoretically, someone can create a custom node that actually does bad things in the background. So you want to make sure that these are trusted sources. The same is true for everything else you download from the internet. You can do a lot of bad things. Make sure you trust the people and the programs you download and use. So what I recommend you to do before you install them, otherwise, or like unless you get them from like hopefully trustworthy sources like myself, you can click on this GitHub link. So this will open the repository from where this custom node comes from. And for one, you can just review the whole code. So you can just read every line of code. But assuming that you are not like an IT expert in that sense, a few things that you should look for is stars for one. Like, just make sure like enough people like this project, so it's not just like a thing that just someone put together and put on the internet and nobody actually checked it. So stars is a good indicator. And another good indicator is contributors, which means that 33 different people contributed to this code via GitHub. So yeah, it would take a lot of effort to build a virus and have like 33 people also contribute to it and not find the issues with it. So this way we can see it's relatively trustworthy. Of course, better to check, but in this case we can trust it. I used this for a long time. So the one we need for today is ComfyUI's ControlNet auxiliary preprocessor from Fan Novel 16 is the name, I guess. So make sure you find this exact same one, and then you can click it, and then you can click on install. So this will run all the stuff that you would usually have to do manually. You can also use the ComfyUI manager for this, but if we only use like a few custom nodes like now, we can actually just have them installed like that via Stability Matrix, which is very convenient. So now we can launch this again after we ran this. I think theoretically it's not a bad issue if you actually just theoretically don't stop it and go back and install it then. I just think it doesn't fully install it until you restart it, because now it might go through and like install extra things. So anyway, just to keep in mind, better just stop it and then restart it and have the extension installed in between. You will also see now it took a bit longer because it needs to check all the things in the background, but generally speaking, it still works fine. So now we can click on Open Web UI again. We still have it open theoretically, but let's just open it again. I can also just close the stuff we had previously. And now let's put in again our workflow. Where did I have it? ControlNet. Here we go. So that is the ControlNet workflow. Now you will see this is not red anymore. So I will just run through this very quickly. So for one, we already have a LoRA in here. You can ignore that. So you can see it's bypassed. It doesn't do anything. So just ignore that for the moment. But here you have the prompts again, same prompts as we had before, and they go still to positive and negative here. just positive and negative moved quite a lot further away, but it's still doing the same thing, still having the same connections. So now we have 3 different parts here. For one, this one you will recognize, hopefully. For one, this should have a preview image node. Doesn't have to have it, but it's nice to see that it actually downscaled the image. But here we have an image-to-image workflow. So this one is not connected at the moment. And now we use the empty latent from here. So this is connected. But theoretically, we can combine this with the image-to-image workflow. But for the moment, I will just keep the empty latent. But again, you already know this. This is nothing new. And this is also nothing new. The new part are these 2 extra groups I have. So one group is called depth and one group is called Canny. These are just names for different ControlNet processes, different ways to get information out of our reference image. We still have the image in here because it's the pasted image. And I think I will just run it now once so you can see what's happening, and then I will explain based on what the output is. I think that makes most sense. So we just have it running now. And oops, this is not the image we pasted, but now you can also see different examples of it. So here you can see stuff is happening, right? So these are what the ControlNet is working with. We have these components for basically any ControlNet we want to use. For one, we have the load ControlNet model, which is kind of like the load checkpoint model where we load a specific ControlNet. So here you will get a list of ControlNets you have available to you. Now I'm figuring you don't have ControlNets yet, but we will get there, I promise you. So you will get a ControlNet in a moment from now. I will show you how, but here you will see all the ControlNets you have downloaded already. This connects to the apply ControlNet node. So this one, as the name suggests, says that it applies this ControlNet to the image generation. There's a few things to consider. For one, you can play with the strength, so you can have the impact of the ControlNet higher or lower, depending on what works best for your image. I'm not sure if it's still like that. 10 is the maximum value. I think it used to be 3 back in the day, I'm not sure. And obviously 0 is the lowest value because that is no strength at all. Another thing that's quite interesting is you can change the start and end percentage. That means, or that determines at what point in the image generation the ControlNet is applied. So a helpful thing sometimes is to use the ControlNet only in the first half of the generation and then let the AI model kind of take over and do its own thing based on the thing it already generated. You don't really have to understand this now. This is kind of advanced to some degree. So anyway, just keep it in mind. You can play around with this, but this will just apply it 100% across the whole generation. Then the issue is why we needed a custom node is that in ComfyUI, as of now, we don't have preprocessors built into ComfyUI. So theoretically, you can find images from the internet that already look like this, right? But that's not always easy. There are sources where you can find like these kind of depth images, but most of the time you just have images like this, right? Like you have images that look like images. So what we have to do is to turn this image into like a thing that the ControlNet can apply. So we have to first process it. That's why it's called the preprocessor. So we put it through this and then it gets this one out. So here we have to consider that we choose the right model. So as we saw earlier and as we saw in the workflow, we are using DreamShaper 8 again, which is Stable Diffusion 1.5. So now we have to make sure that we also choose the Stable Diffusion 1.5 ControlNet, because only Stable Diffusion 1.5 ControlNets are compatible with Stable Diffusion 1.5 models. So for example, now I have them here already. If I use the Diffusers XL depth model, for example, and I try to run this, this should cause an error and it shouldn't generate something. Oops, now I clicked it away by accident. So here it says like non-type object has no attribute shape. So if we choose the wrong ControlNet that's not compatible with our checkpoint model, this will not work. So that's something to keep in mind. The same, no, actually not the same goes for here, but anyway, I will explain this to you as well. Here we can use different preprocessors. So here is depth anything vid L, vid B, and vid S. So this stands for large, base, and small. So they will have different qualities and different speeds. So if you want to have it faster, you can put it to S, and if you want to put it to higher quality, you can put it to L. Another thing to consider here is that you want to have the resolution also at 512, because it doesn't really make sense to have a high resolution ControlNet if you just generate the image with 512 pixels anyway. So that's something to consider. And another thing to keep in mind is, that's the nice and the complicated part. If you choose a model here, it will automatically download the model for you, so you don't have to download it manually. So sometimes there's like some server issues as we had with CivitAI earlier, and then you might get like a very long pause at this node where it will try to download, or it fails or something like that. You can also use different depth preprocessors, so I can also just search for depth, and this is like depth anything. You can also use Midas or Zoe or whatever, any of those. So this basically works the same, so I could also just connect it like so, and then make sure to connect this image to the image here. So this one will just use a different preprocessor in case depth anything doesn't work for you. Yeah, so just to keep in mind, now I have to connect this again. So I want to process it, and then I want to have the output image, the same that goes here, go into the apply control net here. Okay, same basic principle over here. I will just explain this too, just to give you a bit of background. So the fun thing we can do now, just for giggles, I assume, we can connect the positive here to the positive and the negative here to the negative. So you see the, oh, I'm kind of confused. Actually, oh, I had it connected correctly, I believe. I hope. Anyway, so what you have to do is, once it goes through the apply control net, you have to connect those positive and negative to here, because sorry, the clip nodes are going inside of here. I hope that makes sense. So now what we can do is use a control net that really doesn't fit the prompt. We still have the apple prompt. So now we can use how it tries to turn this into an apple. So it takes the outlines and tries to make this look like an apple somehow. So this can be very fun in a sense, right? You can combine two things that don't belong together. You can try combine a control net image with a prompt that kind of matches two things that the AI might not generate together. So that's something fun to do in general. Here again, we see we can select the Stable Diffusion model, or we can also select the XL model. Again, I show you how to download them, no worries. Here we apply it again. Here the preprocessor looks a bit different. It has a high and low threshold and a resolution. Doesn't really matter, you see what it does. This one is more for creating these outlines, so Canny does these outlines, and depth does more this kind of like here, like the depth map. I kind of misconnected them like this, right? Okay. So I gave you all of this information now, so we can kind of, or you can select which control net models you want to work with. So if you followed along, assuming you're not watching this live, I assume you haven't caught up that quickly. So if you haven't watched this live, and if you just pause this in between, you might have generated some images with Stable Diffusion 1.5 and some images with Stable Diffusion XL. So you might already have a feeling if your hardware is good enough for one or the other. So you don't have to download all the control net models. So that's why I first show you how this works, basically. But now you can go back what we had earlier. So we go back to Stability Matrix, and we go to the model browser. So now CivitAI is still broken, which is not an issue this time around. Very nice. Because this time we go to a Hugging Face. So we select the Hugging Face option up here. Because here it has more of these official models, and these control net models are kind of official models to some degree, let's say. So here you will already see like clip stuff, base models, and here you find ControlNet. And now the good thing is, because I prepared this in the past, you can actually see which ones I downloaded. Those are the ones I would kind of recommend to you. So if you figured you want to use Stable Diffusion 1.5, you might want to use those two. I cannot click them again because I already downloaded them. And if you want to use Stable Diffusion XL, you might want to look at these options. Another thing to consider is that ControlNet makes your generation a bit slower. So we will check that in a moment again in Stable Diffusion XL or with the Stable Diffusion XL workflow. We have here the options of small, mid, and full. So these are varying in quality again, but speed up the generation process. So the small model will be faster despite being not faster in total, but will be faster than the mid or the full model, although the quality is quite bad. So I would usually recommend to start with mid, and I like to use the full model because I have good enough hardware. But if you don't, go with the smaller ones and you can still follow along and use this kind of thing. So I can just demonstrate it here. I also have the tile one if I want to use whatever soft edge. I like that one quite a lot. So if I use this Sarge ZTXL soft edge, I just click on it, and I can also select the soft edge here and just click on import, and it will start the download here, and it will do the same thing as we had before, where we'll just download this thing in the background, and I will just have it running because, or maybe I will not have it running because I'm live streaming, so I shouldn't just use my broadband for that. So anyway, you get the point, right? So you can download them here. So let's go back to ComfyUI, and I will take another sip of water. This was the Stable Diffusion 1.5 version, and now we can just go back and also get the Stable Diffusion XL version. So let's do the same as always, download all of this stuff and see if I got it right. So always click on this fit to view to go to the outside, so it's a bit easier to navigate. Here we see Zavichroma XL, and we see here we apply the Diffusers XL model. Here we see we do the preprocessor for 1024 pixels, all the important stuff that changes, and same applies here. Diffusers XL Canny, and here everything stays the same besides the resolution being 1024 pixels. And those connect to the KSampler, and we can still use the image-to-image workflow. So that was that from the JSON, I think, yeah, and from the image, it is the same. It looks the same. Looks perfectly fine as well. So I'll just have that running as well. This example again is not the most interesting one because an apple is an apple, but you can kind of like here the thing you see is actually keeps these kind of harsh edges from the painting. And it will kind of consider them while generating the image, which I think is quite nice. So again, the more fun part is this one again. Let's do something ridiculous once more and just try to use this little example person from ComfyUI to make an apple, and that is slightly disturbing, maybe funny, I don't know. You get it. You get the point. You can do fun stuff like this. So that almost brings us to the end. And we have just a few more things. Let's keep it under 2 hours. I think I can do that. We can do that together. And if you follow along, I hope this was easy to follow along. By the way, same as before, you can also use Museo or Unsplash for references. So Unsplash here is, I think, the more common version or option for getting references, because photographic image references are usually, I guess, more interesting for ControlNet rather than like paintings and stuff like that. But anyway, you have both options, and I think that's quite interesting. So let's do this next. You can see it looks slightly different because the image from the thumbnail I generated a while ago, but this is just another example for maybe, let's say, a slightly more advanced Stable Diffusion XL workflow. Not advanced in the sense of like using more complicated nodes, but kind of tweaking things to get to a place that is more where I want to go. So I will just drag and drop it in here, and that will get us the process how I generated that exact image. So here I put it to fixed just for you to be able to really follow along and see how I kind of optimize some things. So this is my reference image. That one, now I should have given you the link, but since Museo was working, but anyway, this is an old woodcut print, Japanese woodcut print, I believe, that I found via Museo, and I really only want to use this for the gradient because the colors are really, really nice. So my motivation is to use the colors to then generate something different. So here in the prompt you will see something else, like 3/4 portrait, mysterious woman wearing a white linen balaclava and matching bodysuit that glows softly from within, illuminating their stoic face, set against a pristine pure white backdrop in an intimate studio setting, radiating an aura of mystique and quiet introspection, abstract, moody editorial photo shoot. So, sorry, this is a prompt I generated with, or like I kind of developed over a bunch of different tries. So this is something how a prompt might evolve by how you start to work with it, let's say. So I started with a prompt and the images didn't look like how I want them to look like. So I made like an image-to-image workflow that kind of got me closer to where I wanted to be. And then I used an AI to kind of find inspiration, how to change the prompt. And then I get to this kind of mix of sentences and tags and kind of something that works best for the AI to understand where I want to get at. The other thing I have is the negative prompt, which is something very important you might want to consider. It's very late to mention that now, but we've only looked at Apple so far, so you might have noticed that if you generated some other images, but these models are not censored or not filtered, not moderated as much as most of these commercial tools. So if you have, if you want to generate an image of a naked person, for example, in ChatGPT, it will probably prevent you from doing that because it says like this is against our guidelines or whatever, against our user agreement stuff, whatever. Stable Diffusion doesn't have that. So you have a great ethical responsibility to use this in a way that is morally intact and not exposing people or like doing bad things with it, which I think is very important. And one thing is that because it's so unfiltered, if you don't put some negative prompts like not safe for work, NSFW, nude, or other things that might be biased in the data set, like it will create a lot of women with makeup, and if you want a person that doesn't have makeup, you might have to put as a negative prompt as here woman with makeup to kind of put it into a direction where it's closer to what you want to be at. And something that you don't have to add for like a photo of an apple, I assume, is this, but as soon as you create images of people, I would kind of put those in to avoid creating pornographic content or things like that. So I put NSFW and nude into the negative one, so we don't get a lot of naked people, to simplify the point that I'm trying to make. Okay. Then we load the image. This is basically the same as we had before. I have this upscale again, which is actually a downscale. See here, 2000 pixels to 1000 pixels, simplifiedly speaking. And then here we have the KSampler, and this is the kind of, these are the kind of settings that are like the best for CivitAI XL version 6, which is, I mean, here this would be randomized if you create other images, but I like to be around 80 to 100 steps for production ready stuff. And I like to put the CFG around like 5, somewhere between like 4 and 8 usually. And then I use DPM, PP, 3M, SDE or SDE GPU, and exponential. And here, quite interestingly, I will have it running because it will take a moment. The denoise is quite low, which was necessary in order to get it to a point where I want it to be. So it keeps enough of the color. It's like right at the edge where we kind of not create a face anymore because there's no, like, let's say, face-like information inside of here. So if I would put this, for example, to like something like let's say maybe 0.4, I'm wondering at what point it will stop being a face, actually. Yeah, right here you can see it really is struggling to turn this into a face because it just isn't. I assume even at like 0.5. So there it's like a lot of like trial and error to see like when does it start to turn into a face, how much noise do I have to use, how little noise do I have to use, how does it work with this particular image reference and stuff like that. So those are all things to consider, but let's see, but even with 0.5 it will not create the image basically. But anyway, with the link in the description below, you can actually find this link, you can find this image. Of course, you already have that image, but by just downloading it, but you can also find the prompt and the kind of setup how this particular image was generated. So one last thing I want to do while this is running in the background is adding a LoRA model. So this is kind of the next most advanced step that I think I haven't covered on this channel yet, maybe, I'm not sure. So we download the workflow again. So this is basically the same prompt because I was trying to find a low rank adaptation model that was fitting to that. And I'm not sure about this particular image, but generally speaking, a LoRA model can be quite interesting. So let's first check that this is working. Looks about right. Yes, so this is the empty one, but this is with the prompt already in. So what I have here is the load LoRA model, or load LoRA in between the load LoRA node, where I can load the model this way around. So this has basically two information. One is the LoRA that you have to select, which again you have to download, which I will show you in a moment. And then you have the strength of the model and the strength of the clip. The strength of the clip basically says how much of the textual information from the model you take. So when you train these AI models, you have a bunch of text and image pairs. So you have an image, and then you have a text that explains the image, which is basically what we later use as the prompt, right? So it might be like just person, portrait, or apple, or whatever describes the image content. So when we train a LoRA model, we also have to have these image text pairs. So this way it will follow more closely the text, let's say, the tags from the LoRA model. And the strength of the model is basically how much strength you give the model. Yeah, that's basically it. If you put it lower, it will have less of an impact. If you put it higher, it will have a higher impact. Usually I will just keep them together in a sense. So if I lower the value to something like 0.6, I will basically lower both values, but it doesn't, like, you can play around with it, basically. So if you want to get a LoRA, how do you do that? Good news, half good news, half bad news, I assume. Good news is it works in a stability matrix. That's good. Bad news is I assume CivitAI is still down, which is really not good. So good thing is that I have downloaded it before, maybe it's back, but now I have to explain to you the filter options again very briefly. So if we want to find a LoRA model, so if we want to have a particular style or a particular image content, we can find a LoRA for that. So what I want to do is, for one, I can go by highest rated and I can go by all time, that stays the same, but I want to have the model type set to LoRA because I'm searching for LoRA models. And now I have to make a decision if I want to search for SDXL LoRAs or if I want to search for SD 1.5 models. Again, this is the same way as with ControlNet. Only a Stable Diffusion 1.5 model will only work with the Stable Diffusion 1.5 LoRA, and the Stable Diffusion XL model will only work with the Stable Diffusion XL LoRA. That's something to keep in mind. So if you have now decided what you want to do, for this one I only have the SDXL one, but the same applies to the other. I have now set the filter here to SDXL, for example, and LoRA. So this will show me all compatible LoRA models, basically. Can I get this? Yeah, the grid looks a bit better now. So the one I use for this is called 35mm and 35mm film photography. The reason why I choose this is because it's like a rather uncomplicated kind of topic, I assume, and it tells me the prompt, and the prompt is very easy. So these images have been trained with a prompt like 35mm film photography. So what you want to do when you want to use a LoRA is to basically check if they give you information about how to use it. So for one, this person is suggesting using Juggernaut XL and to have the LoRA impact to like 70%, so at 0.7, and the prompt should contain this. So if you don't have something in your prompt that triggers the LoRA, it will only very vaguely apply. So you should kind of check what they suggest, what prompt to use. So that's something important. The thing now is that I already downloaded this. There have been two issues with this. For one, you have to have your CivitAI account connected in order to use or to download some of these models. So you need to create a CivitAI account. I will not completely show you how this works, but I will give you a very brief overlook how it will look like, just so if you run into the issue, because here I set it up already, so I will not see the error, but it will tell you something like download failed. So the thing you have to take care of is going to settings here and go to accounts here and then connect your CivitAI account. The thing you have to do is create that account first, obviously. So what we can do is go here and then open this model via this one here, open the model in CivitAI, and on their website you can also create your account. The other thing that you will find in the live stream description right now is a link to a blog that I'm running, which is called blog.heibara. Oops, I made a comma, but maybe actually we'll find it. That's very nice. And here I explain this error as well. So here we have running Stable Diffusion locally with a stability matrix. Again, this link you will find also in the video description, so no worries about that. And then we have here the download failed fix. So if we go down here, I explain in this tutorial here, you can go to settings, then you have to get your API key, then you get this API key and connect your account that way with the API key, and then you can download any model. It's for free, so don't, like, you can do that. Just to say it's free, it doesn't cost anything. Don't have to do it, but consider. Yeah, okay, CivitAI is really down, so you would download your model that way. If you download it manually, as well as the other ones, I will just quickly give you a reminder that if you want to manually put a model there, you go back to data, then you go here to models, and then you find the appropriate folder. So the ControlNet models are put into this. Very convenient. You can also download them from other sources and put them in here. And if you download a LoRA model somewhere else, you can also just put it in here into the LoRA folder. So just to keep in mind how the LoRA structure, the folder structure works, right? Okay, so let's go back to here and we can just run it right now. And you will see basically the same thing as you saw in the preview. So with some images this works. So one thing to consider, for example, is that this will also allow you to get styles of things that are copyrighted, of course, and that is a big ethical and legal issue. To my understanding, we don't have a lot of legal clarity about the state of AI at this point. So I mean, all I'm doing here is for educational purposes, obviously, but it's something to consider. So now we can also, I'm just going to do it quickly like this. I can go to CivitAI and also search for something like Ghibli, for example, like the very famous anime studio. And here you will, like, they will literally tell you it's Kiki's delivery service. So they just took stills from the movie or from the film to train their LoRA with, which you can do fun stuff with like that. And if you do it for personal use, I think it's less of an issue. But keep in mind, for example, the founder of Studio Ghibli, Hayao Miyazaki himself, or Miyazaki Hayao, himself said that he hates AI. So what are the moral implications of going in, using this model, stealing his style without his consent, and with him explicitly saying that he doesn't like how AI is working? So these are things to consider. They are valuable to you, but you should really kind of reflect on what you should want or are able to use morally and ethically. So this one was, I thought, less complicated in that sense. It probably also uses copyrighted material. I just need to show you here for educational purposes. And sometimes it really has a great impact. In this case, it doesn't have that much of an impact, honestly. It does look quite a bit different, but yeah, maybe not so much. I can also, I think this one is max at, no, this one goes to 100. This used to go to only 300% too. But what we can do here is, this one looks actually quite nice, but I can increase the strength. And by the way, I didn't say that, but To the previous prompt now I added 35mm film photography, and then I added the same prompt as we had before because I have to trigger the LoRA, right? So that is the prompt that the person who made that thing suggested, recommended. So this one looks quite nice actually. Like now I put it to like 300%, which is a lot. The person making the LoRA suggested like 0.7. So this actually is very quite strange. I don't know where this is going. But by the way, here if you see like, oh, I don't like this, you can also just, cancel the current run with this X button here. I'll just keep it running. Or this way you can clear all the pending tasks if you already put a task. If you press like run twice, it will queue up here. And that way you can kind of stop it from that. And yes, now I put it down to like 0.7, which is closer to what the person who trained the model suggested. This again, quite disturbing, not the perfect fit, but generally speaking, this is how actually the glow comes through much nicer now, but this is how you can use a LoRA model to change a style and add like a specific taste, different style, different image content to your image generations. And with that, we are just shy of 2 hours, which is good, I hope. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you were able to follow along. There will be chapters after I finish the stream. I will make the chapters so you can go back and revisit this. All the slides are still available to you, so you can just go through this again, get all the workflows. So that's very convenient, hopefully. I showed you all the models. I'm sorry that today CivitAI is just broken, but it is what it is. What can we do? Sometimes happens, so I showed you as many workarounds as I was able to. I will just do a quick rundown of this again, because I think it kind of recaps all the important things we talked about before. So most workflows start with loading the checkpoint. There are two main models that we are using in this case, Stable Diffusion 1.5 and Stable Diffusion XL. There are other models, but those are the ones that we're working with for the moment. I'll do another stream about more advanced models. Stable Diffusion 1.5 is trained on 512 by 512 pixel images, and Stable Diffusion XL is based and trained with 1024 by 1024 pixel images. So these are the resolutions you want to work with. If you combine this with a LoRA or a ControlNet model, make sure that those match the checkpoint model. Keep that in mind. If you use the LoRA model, just download it and it will be automatically detected. If you download it, good information in general. If you download a checkpoint model or a LoRA and you have ComfyUI open already, you might have to close the tab and open the tab again. You don't have to restart ComfyUI to find it, but it might need a reload to detect the model. It's not gone, it will be there, just to keep in mind. Then we have the positive and the negative prompt. Positive prompt describes what you want to have. Negative prompt describes what you don't want to have. In both cases, let's say SD1.5 and SDXL, you usually use a mix of sentences, kind of describing the context, plus you use some tags, kind of adding some more information. Then the negative prompt describes what you don't want to have. So in this case, for example, especially in not safe for work content, NSFW, nude, bad quality, woman with makeup, or maybe you don't want it to, I don't know, be whatever, something, so you add it in there. Then always make sure if you use an empty latent image, use the same resolution as you have with the model. SDXL is a bit more forgiving, so I will just quickly show you that 1280, which would be like a 4x5 resolution, will also work, just so that you've seen it. But generally you want something close to square, those will work the best. Now it already looks a bit weird, but that's a different issue perhaps. And if you want to use the latent image, like the empty latent image, you connect it here. Those basically determine your resolution. Make sure that you have the upscale node in between when you load an image, not to make it too large. And then to the KSampler, the heart and brain of the image generation. The seed is basically determining the starting noise. So if you have the same seed and the same other settings, it will always be the same image. If you want to check how the other images influence your generation, you put it to fixed. So this way you can kind of check what the image looks like with more or less steps, for example, and all the other values. So that can be helpful to kind of get closer to where you want to be. Then the steps basically is the amount of time it takes, so to say, the many denoising steps the model takes. You can push this quite high up, but it takes longer, and it has diminishing returns, so it's a bell curve. It will get worse at some point. Same with the CFG value, a bell curve. Usually I prefer values between, let's say 4 and 8, depending on the model. Some types of models need a very low CFG value. And generally speaking, this is how closely it relates to your prompt. The lower the CFG value, the more creative it will be, the less it will follow your prompt. And the higher it is, the more it will try to stick to your prompt. Sampler and scheduler kind of depends on the model. With Zervichroma XL, I like to use this combination. The most basic one and the most useful one, I guess, is Euler and normal. That one will basically work for anything, so I can also work, this will also work with Stable Diffusion XL. Now it will look maybe a bit strange. Anyway, if you use Stable Diffusion 1.5 and you kind of want to get slightly better outcomes, you might want to put this to Keras, which also takes a bit longer, so that's something to consider. So these are the kind of options. If you use the empty latent image, if you don't have a reference image, you want to put this to 100% random noise. And if you want to use a reference image, you kind of determine how much of the image it uses. So 0.6 means 40% of your reference image and 60% random noise. These are basically all the important things you need to get started. I will just give you, like, if you stick around to here, I will give you a little extra thing, a very small fun idea, which is another node that I like. So we just stop this. We can go to packages and we go to extensions. And one thing that I didn't show you, which is quite fun, is PhotoPea. So this one I used for a while as well. Seems to work pretty well. It seems rather trustworthy. At least it has like 160 stars. So if we go here, we can install it, and it's very fast because it's basically just an iframe. And if we launch this now, we can use PhotoPea inside of ComfyUI, Stability Matrix. ComfyUI. If you don't know what PhotoPea is basically an online version of Photoshop that's free, so that's pretty cool already. So if I reload this, actually in this browser sometimes it doesn't work. Yeah, in this case it doesn't work. For this one I actually have to close it and open it again. If I go back into our image-to-image workflow, let's go here quickly. I actually have it on my desktop, but let's do it like so. So we want the image-to-image workflow for SDXL. I'm just going to use this one. What we can do now is have our reference image, and now we have open in PhotoPea editor as an option. When we right-click this, we can open in PhotoPea editor. We once have to say start using PhotoPea, and then it will load, hopefully. Now it doesn't work yet, we have to close it and open it again. This is only the first time you use it, but now we'll load it into PhotoPea. So this is basically Photoshop. If you have if you know Photoshop, if you have used it before. Now I'll do this very quickly. I did this in a previous live stream. I'll just do it very quick and fun. We make a new layer. That's convenient in this situation. We can have the brush, and I'm just gonna get something like a similar kind of yellow greenish. I'm so bad at picking colors. Let's just do this. It's not the greatest color. Then I'll just have the size a bit larger. And now I can do something like just draw ears or anything. I can do whatever I want with this and kind of change the content just by scribbling in it if I want to have the reference image to look a bit different. What I want to do next is I just show you quickly. I created a new layer, so now I can go to filter, and then I can go to noise and set or have add noise. And this way I can have Gaussian noise added to it, which will help the denoiser later to add more information to it, otherwise it will just look like a plain color. So I like to add like whatever, let's say 20% of noise, and then I like to put the opacity a little bit down to give it a bit more randomness. And now I can save to node, and this should actually put it in here. And if I run this again, it will not have ears, but anyway, this way you can add kind of some extra stuff. So now we'll turn it into apples, but it's a fun way to play with the image to image thing, and I think this can already be quite interesting for long term, kind of playing around with it. That it shall be for today. Thank you so much for sticking around, for watching all the way until here. Check the chapters to jump back and forth and give me some feedback. Let me know in the description, I'm already saying. Let me know in the comments what I should do next. If you have any questions, if you want to see something else, if you have interest in a membership program, and if you want chat emotes, what kind of chat emotes you want, make sure to subscribe. I don't know, this is still at 150 subscribers. This is from a long time ago, but the channel grew quite a lot. I'll try to do this more regularly, at least every few weeks now. So stick around, stay subscribed, get subscribed, leave a comment and a like, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.